China just launched its 300th warship. America took 4 years to build one destroyer. That is not a typo. Right now, the People's Liberation Army Navy, the plan, is the largest navy in the world by sheer number of hulls. And the West barely noticed, because China didn't just build a fleet, it built a ghost fleet, funded through a financial system so opaque, so deeply buried inside state-owned enterprises and shadow budgets, that Western analysts are still trying to figure out the real number. And here's the thing nobody is saying out loud. The scariest part is not the ships. It is the price tag, and what China is willing to sacrifice to afford it. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, the number I am going to give you will completely change how you see the Pacific. Let us start with money, because that is always where the real story lives. The United States spends roughly $896 billion a year on defense. That sounds enormous. It is enormous. But here is the problem. American defense spending is bloated, slow, and dominated by a handful of legacy contractors. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics. These companies are publicly traded. They answer to shareholders. They prioritize margin over speed. Building one Gerald R. Ford-class aircraft carrier costs roughly $13.3 billion. Just one. And it takes about 8 years from contract to deployment. China built 6 destroyers in the time it took America to commission one. How? Because China does not have a defense industry. China has a state-controlled industrial machine, and defense is just one output of that machine. CSIC, the China Shipbuilding Industry Corporation, and CSSC, the China State Shipbuilding Corporation, are not companies in any Western sense. They are arms of the Chinese Communist Party. They do not chase profit. They chase tonnage. They chase capability. And they are subsidized directly by the Chinese government at a rate that no private Western firm can even remotely compete with. Official Chinese defense spending sits around $225 billion annually, but that number is a fiction. Chinese military analysts, the Rand Corporation, and the International Institute for Strategic Studies all estimate that real Chinese military expenditure, once you factor in state subsidies, dual-use technology programs, and off-book procurement, is likely somewhere between $300 billion and $350 billion per year. $300 billion, hidden, moving through state enterprises, civilian shipyards, and infrastructure budgets. A ghost budget for a ghost fleet. Now let us talk about the fleet itself, because the numbers are staggering. As of 2025, the plan operates approximately 370 warships. The United States Navy operates around 290. On paper, China already won the numbers game years ago. But here is where it gets interesting, because this is not just about quantity. China's Type 055 destroyer, NATO calls it the Renhai class, is arguably the most capable surface combatant ever built by a non-American power. It displaces roughly 13,000 tons. It carries 112 vertical launch cells. It is packed with advanced anti-ship missiles, air defense systems, and anti-submarine weapons. And it costs China an estimated $900 million per hull. For context, America's Arleigh Burke Flight 3 destroyer, the backbone of the U.S. surface fleet, costs about $2.2 billion per ship. China is building comparable firepower at less than half the price per unit. That is not just a military advantage. That is an industrial strategy. China has essentially industrialized naval warfare the same way it industrialized solar panels, electric vehicles, and consumer electronics, through massive state subsidy, brutal cost compression, and sheer manufacturing scale. And here is the financial consequence that nobody in Washington wants to talk about. The American shipbuilding industry is in crisis. The United States has exactly 7 major public shipyards capable of building warships. Compare that to China, which has over 20 and is actively expanding. Huntington Ingalls, the only company in America that builds aircraft carriers, reported that it is consistently behind schedule and over budget. The USS John F. Kennedy, the second Ford-class carrier, was delivered more than 2 years late. The Virginia-class submarine program is running at less than one submarine per year, when the Navy needs two. Meanwhile, China is reportedly producing warships at a rate of roughly 15 to 20 major hulls per year. The gap is not closing, it is widening, every single year. Now let us zoom out because this fleet does not exist in a vacuum. It exists to protect something, and that something is money. China controls somewhere between 40 and 45% of global maritime shipping by volume. The South China Sea alone handles an estimated $3.4 trillion in trade every single year. Taiwan, sitting at the edge of that sea, manufactures over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors, chips that power everything from iPhones to F-35 fighter jets. If China ever successfully dominates the South China Sea militarily, not occupies it, just dominates it, it effectively holds a gun to the throat of the global tech economy. That is the endgame. That is why the Ghost Fleet exists. China does not need to fire a single shot to win the economic war. It just needs to credibly threaten the sea lanes. It needs to make any American intervention look too costly, too risky, and too slow. And the math is starting to work in Beijing's favor. A Rand Corporation study found that in a simulated conflict over Taiwan in 2025, American forces would suffer significant losses within the first 72 hours, primarily from China's DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles, weapons specifically designed and funded to kill aircraft carriers. The DF-26 carries a reported price tag of around $5 million per missile. America's carrier, $13 billion. China's answer to it, $5 million. That is a kill ratio that should keep Pentagon accountants awake at night. So what is America doing about it? The short answer is spending more money, but not necessarily smarter money. The AUKUS agreement, the trilateral defense pact between the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia, commits to delivering nuclear-powered submarines to Australia at a cost somewhere between $268 billion and $368 billion over decades. It is a massive financial commitment designed to create a credible undersea deterrent in the Pacific. The Pacific Deterrence Initiative, a specific Pentagon budget line created to counter China, has been allocated roughly $10 billion annually in recent years. That money is going toward pre-positioned munitions, upgraded bases in Guam and Japan, and next-generation long-range missile systems. And Congress is increasingly pressuring the Navy to expand toward a 350-ship fleet, a number that naval analysts say would require an additional $30 to $40 billion per year above current shipbuilding budgets. But here is the brutal truth. Even if Congress writes every check tomorrow, the bottleneck is not money. The bottleneck is labor. American shipyards have lost a generation of skilled welders, pipe fitters, and marine engineers. It takes years to train them. It takes decades to rebuild that institutional knowledge. And China has been poaching talent and copying designs through state-sponsored industrial espionage for 20 years, while American yards struggle to stay solvent. The financial race is real, but the industrial race may already be lost. Here is where we land. China built a $300 billion ghost fleet inside a budget the world was not allowed to audit. It used state capitalism like a weapon, subsidizing shipyards, compressing costs, and scaling production at a pace America has not seen since World War II. The United States spends more per ship, builds fewer ships, and faces an industrial base that is structurally broken. The South China Sea, $3.4 trillion in annual trade, sits in the crosshairs of this rivalry. Taiwan's semiconductor industry, the backbone of the global tech economy, is the prize both sides are circling. The Ghost Fleet is not a mystery. It is a message. And the message is this. China is betting that America will look at the cost of a Pacific war and decide the bill is too high to pay. So here is the question I am leaving you with today. And I want you to fight this out in the comments. Is China's Ghost Fleet a genuine military threat that America can no longer match? Or is it a financial bluff, a show of numbers over real capability designed to win without ever firing a shot? Drop your answer below. Because depending on which side you land on, the entire strategy of the next decade looks completely different.